It's good afternoon from me. My name is Babatunde Oshinkoya. I have a background in engineering. I'm a mechanical engineer and I work within the data center space. I support cloud computing, network infrastructure, Internet of Things, and critical infrastructure as the case may be. I'm from Ogun State, Nigeria. However, my mom is from the East, from Delta State, which makes me a bit balanced. I have a very good number of years I've lived in the North, which means that I should be able to tell you about how Nigeria works with the experience I have within the three region. My dad used to be in the military, and I used to be his company when he travels around being posted. And I can remember vividly going through most of the states in Nigeria via road with my dad. I think we grew up with a very strict, disciplined environment. I've got two siblings. My senior sister, who is about 5 years older than I am, and I have a junior brother who is actually 2 years younger. And then we grew up very, very, very closely knitted. I studied in the barracks, Command Children's School, and then Command Day Secondary School, and then eventually have to go to the university in LASU, and then further moved to Unilag, and then before I studied other courses abroad as God may have it. I've learned to be very resilient, and life in the barrack has taught us to be able to do as much as you can, take every opportunity, be bold, be open-minded, be ready to take the challenges as they come. And I think that has been a major part of me. I grew up primarily with my mom. She's been the inspiration that I think everyone would like to have. She's been very strong for us. She helped us to navigate our challenges, and having that mindset that you can do anything and you can achieve anything you set your mind into has brought me to this part that I am in my career, in my daily life, in how I handle my issues, and that has just been how we've been able to break the yoke that has always come as a challenge for us as I grew in my journey through life. My childhood was very interesting. Just like I said, I grew up in the barrack, and we had many friends. I stayed in Ojo Barrack and I stayed in Officers Village. We have many friends with our parents with that same military background. You wake up early in the morning with a very strict, very, very, very strict regiment. So the way it works is you wake up very early in the morning and you have to go to school on a weekday. I remember vividly my dad used to work in Bonnie Camp, so he will drop us at Command Children's School Mile 2, and he will proceed to work, myself and my senior sister at the time. And then we had other friends as well who will join us in the morning, and maybe in the afternoon their parents will come to pick us up. So it was a shared responsibility. And then in the barrack as well, the child was born into the community. So every child was the responsibility of every parent around. So the way it was, you couldn't just do anything naughty. A neighbor was going to see you and then was going to report you to your dad. And not just report you, he was first going to discipline you. And then when your parent come, you were a sign of disgrace to them. So they were also going to discipline you. However, it was a very open-minded situation where even when our parents come late from school, we were able to stay in our neighbor's house very freely. Sometimes we were taught from home never to eat elsewhere out of the home. So you see us very strict. Even when you are very hungry, you had to stay to the code that it was in the house. Parents were able to talk to the kids just with their eyes. A blink of the eyes has a million meanings, and then you understood what it was, and you could either conform, you could really, really conform to that. Having that family code. We had things that we could do in the house that were free to us, and we had things that were more of an abomination that we never could do. We were not allowed to talk about our homes in a very negative way when we get outside. Things that were agreed in the house stayed in the house, and again, it was just like a military barrack where you have the kids, and then the mom, and then the dad. It's interesting to know that typical Nigeria, I had uncles staying with us. So we had my dad's junior brother who was also in the army, and I had my mom's junior brother as well who was perceived as the first child in the house. staying with us at the time. So it was about 6 of us all together. And then sometimes my uncles from my maternal side and my paternal side will visit. So it was a nucleus family, but at the same time, there were responsibilities for my parents for the external families, which we saw as uncles, and they were also responsible for us as we grew. So it was a mix of both that nucleus family that you had, and then the externals. For my mom was a caterer, and she was doing very well, as she would supply pastries to the military, to military offices. She would supply in command. She would supply to Agbara. I remember the Agbara green and the Agbara plastic industry where she would, and we will all wake up very early in the morning. Either you were going to roll flowers, you were going to make the meat pie stuffings, you were going to help with the egg roll stuffings. It was a point of duty because that was what fed us, apart from what my dad did as a military officer at the time. So my childhood was filled of wonderful memories, disciplined, kitchen work, housework, sports, time out, just like every normal growing middle class Nigerian family. Well, thinking of my mom raising us, what comes to mind is that she was a very strong woman. You can imagine a woman taking care of a typical male dominated family. So I had my uncle, I had myself, and my junior brother, and then it was just my sister. So she had to really step up her game to meet up with the antics of boys growing up and then in the barracks. My mom was very strong. I can remember vividly when my dad left. She took the responsibility head on. She focused on our growth, on our development. It became a double job for her because I remember she would wake as early as 3 a.m. and then we will help in doing all the meat pie and buns mix. And then puff puff, sometimes, those mix had to be done and had to be done correctly. So we will all have our portion of what to do and then go back to sleep and come back. As tough as things were, she was responsible for us and she was responsible for other people too. We would see her teach people, take the business out to teach people, earn enough money to take care of us. And she grew up to become the area rep for Nigerian Army Officers Wife Association, and we were very lucky. I think my mom's dedicated and steadfast behavior and that strong, resilient behavior made her grow across rank. It was tough. It was very tough, but she was tougher. You consider an octopus with 8 hands trying to do exceedingly well in everything she did, and I think she did a really, really good job in making sure that we all went to school. We were clear in what it was. She discussed the challenges with us. We knew what it was. We knew what she was going through. And it was just our duties to also support her to make sure that the end result was good for all of us and was good for her. And making her proud was one thing that I think we all realized we had to do sometime as we grew along. And we really, really did that, in my opinion. Well, my dad left when I was 7, and immediately I realized he had left. And one thing that will make you know was that strong discipline that we had initially, that figure was not there. So I think the first 2 weeks we had a very free for all life. We were allowed to go play without timing. I think that was a period where my mom would cry and was trying to figure out herself. But immediately after that 2 weeks was over, she took the bull by the horn and she started chasing up with the things she needed to do. I realized the first set of things that had to happen was that we converted half of the living room into a bakery because she needed to do more and to meet up with us. So immediately I knew that tall masculine figure in the house at that time was not there. And luckily, while my uncles were there, I think my uncle stepped in quickly. One of my uncle was in the university at the time, and he stopped staying in the hostel, and he started going from home. So we had somebody who we were scared of, who could take that mantle and who could help while my mom was out trying to make money to. So yes, I felt it immediately. I knew that absence was there. There was no stronghold at that first couple of months. But immediately afterwards, we got our reading. She was back again, just like I said. She was strong, tough, and ready to take you on. I remember my mom, will box, will bite, will beat, will step on you just to make sure that you do what the right thing was. While it continued to come as a challenge for her, I think she stepped up very strongly and she was ready to run with it. And that in its own state was one thing that I will never forget. How she rose up to the occasion. Well, I think the hardest part of the journey for me was stepping up to be a man at a very young age. So, at a very young age, one lesson I think that my mom instilled into all of us was to be responsible. And then the way it worked for us was, so the immediate eldest child, was supposed to be responsible for the younger one. So I was responsible for my junior brother, and my sister was responsible for me, and my uncle was responsible for my sister, and my mom will be responsible for everybody. And in that case, I could not come back from school without making sure I came back with my junior brother. Immediately, one of the major lessons that we learned was not to wait and depend on anyone. So she was clear to us and she sat to us and said, "Your dad has gone." It was a period where the president Babangida was giving out new cars to the officers, and he has taken his, and she was like, "See, your dad has gone and he has taken his car and you must go to school." So in my head, immediately we just knew, we decided to walk to school. So myself and my junior brother will walk all the way to school, and then we'll walk all our way back. She was very clear, there was no dependence on anybody. So emotionally it was breaking, while you see all your friends, neighbor go to school with their parents, taking them and dropping them in school. We walked. We woke up very early. We set out very early and we walked. Luckily, Nigeria was safe at the time. I wonder what it would have been now. But we walked. We walked to school. She made us stuff. We prepared our stuff and we walked. And we walked back. And when I got to secondary school, I will walk halfway to meet my junior brother halfway. Or while he's coming back, he will walk and come meet me in school. And then we'll walk back home. And then you needed to start taking responsibility. So at that young age, I had my key. I knew what was to be done. I needed to get some things done. There was a supplier who will supply meat to the house, because of we have to prepare meat pie for the next day, and I had to make sure that he delivers that meat right. I won't open it, but I'll take record to say yes, the meat has been delivered and this has been done. And so yes, I think emotionally, I think as I grew up, I started seeing that gap, that gap, that figure that you needed to guide you around as a boy. But the fear to succeed and to make my mom proud did not allow us to miss the line. I must say authoritatively that that fear was there to succeed, and it was very clear in my head that there was no any other option. The only other option was to succeed again and to do better than what the original plan was. And then having my senior sister being a trailblazer, showing us how to do it, kept us in track. But we're emotionally, I think I was drained as a child. Mentally, I will not say mentally that I had that feeling of what it was mentally, but emotionally, that feeling of not having your dad around and seeing other kids could do things with their dad, they could go out, you just feel, well, this is what the life is. But within ourselves, we had love. We always made ourselves, we fought as kids, but we always made ourselves happy. And somehow my mom was enough. Like, she just made herself enough. I think she was able to bridge that gap. And she talked to us. Yes, sometimes that frustration comes in and you see her shouting, you see her beating, you see her little things that need just to be explained to, came up with tough, very tough. It was like using a sledgehammer to kill an ant. Yes, but we never saw her as being wicked or abusing us or something. But for some reason, we just knew that, well, this woman was doing the best that she could. She was going through what she was going through, and she just needed to take it. So I think emotionally for me, it was just that absence. But in terms of the mentality for me was just to succeed, and to make my mother proud, and that was just something that that stuck to me all through at that initial immediate period that I can remember. Yes, were there moments where I felt angry. Yes, I was always angry. I was always angry and I was always confused. Somehow I figured out what to do, but I was always angry. Like, I was angry. I always wanted to win, and because of that, just a game of football. When I lose, I was going to cry, and while I cry, I was going to either create fight with the guys who had won. I couldn't handle to lose. I was always angry. I think I needed more. I think, if I'd had it balanced in my way, maybe it would have been better. So yes, in terms of direction, I think I spoke to people who were older. I was lucky to have, again, like I used to say, I was lucky to have my senior sister, and I had a few military officers who became very close friends to my mom, who were young graduates from the NDA. We've got people who my mom was taking care of, who were in LASU at the time. We've got family members who things were not so rosy for, and they needed to depend on my mom to get things done. So God was merciful on her, and we had all these people. So within the home, I had people I could see, I had people I could talk to, I had people who could guide me, I had people who could help me with my assignments. So yes, and then my mom was also very, very nice to the youth corpers who used to come in to teach in the school at the time. So in terms of my education, I had people who I could relate to at that early stage, who were going to help in doing one thing or the other, who were going to do one thing or the other to help us succeed. So yes, I was opportune and fortunate that within my confusion, I had solution. Like they were someone or two who could help me get through that frustration. And again, the bond of family was also strong. I had my junior brother, who is my best friend, who is my playmate, and then my senior sister, who for me is like a second mother and will always continue to guide. Yes. Well, how did I deal with the feeling? Again, it's not something I can clearly say I understood how I dealt with the feeling, but because we were always together and we had that thought of surviving together, nobody left anybody behind. It was a one for all for one situation for me. So we had that very, very, very close bond within the nucleus family. And then because the way my mom was and all the people that she was supporting, and who was also, again, that umbrella for me and genuine umbrella for me, gave me that room to be able to grow without fear. I think I was lucky. I made up my mind very quickly to chase what I wanted to chase, even in that anger of what you call unwarranted suffering that was not my undoing. We just decided to start making marmalades out of lemonade out of the lemon that the orange had turned into, and that was how I was able to play around life. Well, if you do, I have any turning point where I realized my life didn't have to stay this way. So I think my stories will be in phases. I think there was no real actual turning point where I would say my life was not going to be this way. But one major thing I would say, a turning point in my life to chase, because as a young man, at some point you get to that point where you start missing where the point is, and then you start chasing ghosts, and then start behaving in a particular way. Where so I would say a particular point in my life that I would think is very important and has made me who I am was when I had to repeat the class in SS2. Very interesting story. I will not consider myself a dull student. However, I never concentrated in class. At that point in time, I think we had so much difficulty at home, and you had to wake up very early. Then I'd grown up, I was 15, I guess, 14, 15. I'd taken the mantle. My sister was in the university. I'd taken the mantle to do all the early morning mixing. So I wake up as early as 3. I need to mix flour for puff puff, mix flour for meat pie, do all the pastries that was going to go to school, to Agbara. And then, there was no time. While I will really not say there was no time, that concentration, I felt more like there was a whole lot of weight on my shoulder I can't even explain now. And then school was not just it. You get to class, and some of those teachers know me personally because they knew my sister. She was extremely very brilliant. And then they come into class, Shunkoya, Olodo, this, and then they continue. So that for me was overwhelming. And I think instead of concentrating in class, I disliked all my teachers. And for whatever reason, I will not concentrate in class. I was not I was not testing the waters. I knew the guys who you will call at that time the bad boys in school, but I was not a bad boy, but I was just not concentrating, and somehow I think the result for me at that time was to fail my exams in all three times, and I had to repeat the class. I think that turning point for me was that day I got that report card, and it was like yes. And I remember one of my teachers, Mrs. Afolabi, saying that if you don't change, you will end up polishing the shoes of your mates. That for me rang a bell, and I sat down. I told myself that won't happen again to me. While my parents, my mom would want me to change, while my mom would want me to change my school at the time, my senior siblings were like, no, if he doesn't go back there to repeat and learn his lessons, he will not pick it up. And I think it was the best decision they ever took. And going back to Command Day Secondary School Ojo to repeat that class toe to toe, and trying to correct my wrong was the best decision. It was a big lesson for me. It also taught me resilience. It showed that failure, it's not denial of one's success. It also showed that repeating a class was not the worst thing that could have ever happened. If it was well managed, it could have. And I was lucky to meet wonderful classmates. I think I today align more to the guys of the 96 set than the guys of the 95 set, which would have been my original set. And I got that support in very strong friends, very strong brotherhood, people I could align with, look up to, and then start to compete, like to really compete outside of maybe to compete, learn from them, and then to compete for your place in class. And that will be my major turning point out of any other thing that have happened to me in life. Well, I think the role of family is very very strong, and you can't underscore a complete family when you have your father and the mother. But for me, I think I had a fathering mother who took care of us. She was the father and she was the mother. She was everywhere for us. It was surprising to note that at the time, my mom would have just been seen as just a caterer, who was initially supposed to just be a housewife. I remember her always telling us that she had learned catering just to be able to take care of her family, like just to be able to do things for us in the house, Sunday meal, and to have anything other than the regular food. And God knows. One thing I would have thought, one thing I always think in my head is it is always very important for a woman to have skills, because I can imagine if she does not have those practical skills, what would have become of us at the time. I strongly think that she's done well. She's trained all of us far beyond university level. She was backbone till we got married. She was involved in everybody's wedding, and then she was just there, ever supportive, and she continued to support the grandchildren that she saw before God said it was time. So I think that you cannot take out the essence of a supporting family. You can't take out the essence of a complete family where you have a father figure. However, I would say while it was tough for us, I really did not miss that. How she covered up that gap was something extraordinary, and I still cannot explain till date. And that's just the truth. She was just, again, like I would say, an octopus. And that's what my mom was, and she was just there for all of us and beyond. I think the values my mom would have instilled first was to believe in yourself. Like, you can achieve anything. There is nothing except your mind is not set to it. First is to believe in yourself, and secondly, naturally, was to be kind. My mom was regarded as the hajia whose house food will grow. My mom feeds almost everybody. Like, you walk up into my house, so for me, it's to be kind. Like, irrespective who, how, where, just be kind. My mom has shown us that kindness, above all, will take you to places where you don't think you want to be, places you want to be, but you can't be on your own. I think she was very, very straightforward. We learned that from her. And she was very fearless. There were times she needed to confront my dad when he wants to have us without her permission. There were times she needed to confront even the army, the military, when we were almost going to be homeless. There were times she had to step up her game to do more, when, just like you always say, double your hustle, yes, and then she had to get us involved, like whatever you do as a family, get the kids involved, let them know what the source is. So I would say resilience was one, being kind is another, being respectful, being truthful, being stand up to the challenges, look straight eyeball to eyeball to those challenges, and then dream. My mom was a dreamer, and she really, really made us dream. I remember her being the secretary to being the national secretary to Nigerian Army Officers Wife Association, and then was sitting directly side by side with Miriam Abacha, and you will never know how much those influences had come and affected my own personal life. So yes, I'm a dreamer. I'm open to whatever opportunity comes my way. I take it wholeheartedly. I try to be as kind as I can to people, support, lead the pack when I have to, and I take responsibilities. I think those are major influences I take from my mom till date.